In the past few months, a couple of old friends of mine, or a few old friends of mine from software agencies and innovation agencies have jumped into my diary to talk about how Million Labs does what it does. And I think there's two reasons for that. The first is that NoCode has moved out of the kind of niche news and into the mainstream technology discussion. I think the second reason is it started to hurt software agencies. Work is going to NoCode agencies. I mean, in commerce, cost and convenience always wins, and there is no doubt that delivering software with no code is cheaper than delivering software with code. And if we take some statistic quoted by Gartner, I think the average mobile application costs $75,000 to build and takes the thick end of a year. The average no-code mobile application costs less than $10,000 and takes a few weeks. And if there was a notable difference in quality between the coded application and the no-code application in the eyes of the consumer, that wouldn't matter, but there isn't. And so no-code is winning. There is another figure quoted by Gartner that 65% of all applications would be built with no-code or low-code by the year 2025, and I think we're probably already there. And I've always said I think that's because the number of applications being built is going to more than double, not because it's going to eat development work, but actually we can now see that there are development agencies being hurt, and so it is clearly taking away some of their business. And my feeling is that's because there has always been a place for development. There always will be a place for development where we're building something new. However, if you're just taking existing modules and knocking them together to make an application, then that's where no code really lives. And that is the majority of the work that most agencies do. There are obviously two ways an agency can defend itself against no code. The first is to learn how to do it. And the second is to focus on the things that they do that no-code agencies don't do, specifically focusing on building things that have never been built before, or offering wider services than no-code agencies. No-code is a stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap methodology. You need to do lots and lots of small projects, and because of that you have to eschew a lot of the higher value things that wrap around software development, the consultancy if you like. And therefore, a customer that is looking for that consultancy, that high value technology discussion, isn't going to come to a no-code agency. So there are a couple of things that people can do that allow them to compete with the faster, cheaper, new technology trend. So I thought about what advice I would give to people that are looking to build an agency in the no-code space, and it got me thinking about the no-code methodology, because actually a couple of other numbers for you. Million Labs delivers about 100 projects in a month, all of which are somewhere around that average $9,500 mark in price. And we do that profitably, and we do that at pretty good quality as well. And we do that without a single project manager on staff. So, what that's going to tell you is that we do things very, very differently to a traditional software agency. We have a different methodology. No-code has a different methodology. And you need to understand what that is. Because it's fun to say and nicely alliterative, I've often said with no-code, Agile is not agile enough. But to understand why, you have to understand Agile in the first place. So I want you to cast your mind back to the 90s when Agile was first invented. Wayne's World reference. If you think about it, back in the 90s, we'd just been through an era where software development was owned by people that actually built the computer as well. 50s, 60s and 70s, you had to be a hardware engineer to even consider building software. You had to understand how the two knitted together. But as we came through the 80s, we got people like Atari who were hip and cool and started developing in Silicon Valley languages. Also, languages started to be differentiated from each other, so we had different software skills. We had people that built user interfaces using whizzy new things like HTML, and we had people that built middleware and people that dealt with servers, IT operations people. And that meant that we now needed to have multidisciplinary teams. So when Agile came along, it came along because the way that we were delivering software was changing rapidly. And it also came along because we had to have better communication in teams. And it came along because the hip new young people from the 90s, cowabunga, wanted to react to the old school engineering methodology of waterfall that had come before it. But if you cast your mind forward to now, the way that we deliver software has just changed fundamentally again. 3 features of a NoCode project which massively differentiate it from Agile is 1, speed. It is rocket fast. The average application is built in 100 to 120 hours, and that's by one guy, and that's the second thing. Software isn't built by teams anymore. It's built by one person, mostly. And the third thing is that that person is not a software developer. They are a citizen developer. They are a person that hasn't really got all of that background in going to university and learning how to write code. And so those 3 things mean that these people want to do things differently. They need to do things differently. So why isn't Agile enough? Well, if you think about the methodology of Kanban or extreme programming or Scrum or any of those others, they bring people together to look at a requirement. We all discuss the requirement, we prioritize the requirement, then somebody goes away and builds the requirement, and then we get back together and we look at the requirement that's been built, we test it in a team, and we decide whether it's fit for purpose. All of that is massively overweight when the development cycle itself is only 100 to 120 hours long. You've got a project that's going to weigh down the delivery and make it capsize. That means that there are only really 2 important points of communication in a no-code project. There is the point that all of the requirements are given to the developer, and the point that we get the software back and start testing it. We're back to waterfall. And that gave Million Labs a real challenge, because if the development cycle of the software was going to cost 100 to 120 hours, what we didn't want was a requirement gathering process that was going to take 500 hours, and we didn't want a testing process that was going to take 500 hours. So not only did we have to have a delivery cycle that was in the idiom of no-code, we also had to figure out how to have the other sections of the project have the same sort of weight and feel. The only way to do that was automation. I spoke with Simon yesterday about this, and we reckon that over the past 3 years we've spent about $1 million on automation. We're constantly iterating and constantly making changes. Our poor clients have had to live through our software upgrading rapidly. And the reason for that isn't that we want to go faster or we want to be cheaper. We've always really been at the same price point, the same speed we are now. The reason for doing it is quality. There will have been plenty of no-coders watching this presentation and hearing me say $9,500 is the average cost of an application and thinking, well, we can do it faster and cheaper. And you can, we can. But the problem is, their software that they deliver is horseshit. 9 out of every 10 no-code projects leaves their client disappointed. Quality has been a huge issue for the industry. You can build beautiful, scalable, secure, extensible applications that will go on to be unicorns with no code, but you have to have the tools to do it. That means that project management tools like Monday or Jira or ClickUp or any of the others are nowhere near fit for purpose, and so those agencies that are trying to use them or have them heavily embedded in their process just simply can't play the game of no code. You have to start again. And it's the same with project managers and scrum masters. You know, we found that our project management resource was sat listening. They weren't doing the job that they normally do, which is to figure out how long a project is going to take, to manage the risks and issues that are going to impact on that time and the cost of delivery as well. In reality, ours were sitting in meetings, listening to developers and clients talking and thinking, I've got nothing to say here. And so you have to automate communication, you have to automate project timelines, and now we're in the process of figuring out how we automate things like testing more, how we automate things like requirement gathering more. I had a conversation with an agency owner the other day that said that they're going to automate requirement gathering, and I thought, why? You only do a handful of projects every year. There might be repeatability, but there's going to be hardly any repeatability. To make that worthwhile, you have to be doing hundreds of projects every month. And that means your agency model needs to change substantially. You can't sell hundreds of projects every month using the traditional agency sales model that they have. So their automation tools are going to be a costly white elephant, but for us, they make sense. And that brings us on to the other problem of no-code. There aren't very many businesses in the world where you can make a gazillion% profit on a project. And if you think about that, let's use simple math, $10,000 project, and you're making a normal profit margin on it, to survive and pay management, you need to have a boatload of projects running. I mean, loads of projects. So the sales process has to be cheap and cheerful as well. It has to be completely automated as well. So everything from the nose to the tail of the beast has to be running at incredible efficiency to take enough money out of every project to make an organization that works. And that's why we see so many freelancers and so many small agencies starting up in no-code and immediately slamming into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour when they try and scale, because it's really hard. It's really hard to get over that hump. Of course, the good news is there's no shortage of demand. That's why I'm quite happy to talk about these things and share them, because there's lots of competitors already in the market. There will be lots more competitors coming. No-code is here to stay. Most small software agencies or local software agencies will have a handful of customers in any given year and make good value out of all of them. We have 5 founders a day beating their way to our front door because it turns out lots of people want to build software. They just can't because it's too expensive. So if you can bring that price point down to a reasonable level that they can fund out their personal savings or stick on a credit card or, ask their dad for a loan, you will end up building hundreds of pieces of software. But if, like Kodak back in the 90s, you continue to dogmatically try and apply the thinking of your current software agency, the Agile approach, the personalized experience of requirement gathering and speccing, lots and lots of consultancy, you're just going to sink. It isn't going to work for no-code, and somebody like us that is lean and fast will come and steal your breakfast, because it turns out that most people don't value those things. What they do value is their ability to play in the first place. So Agile isn't agile enough, and you are going to have to automate the buggery out of your processes to even begin to play the game of no-code. Anyway, party on, dude. Cowabunga. Eat my shorts. If you want to talk any more about no-code, feel free to contact me either via emailing millionlabs@hello@millionlabs. We will reply, we are nice. Or you can go to our website, which is millionlabs.co.uk. Cheerio.